You joining us today. We are expecting a relatively large number of participants today, so we're going to give folks just a few minutes to join. Make yourself comfortable knowing that you're going to be here hopefully for a bit with us throughout this webinar. We're so excited to have you here to be able to share what we've been learning about early care and education registered apprenticeship. And of course, to gain your perspective and to answer questions that you might have. And in just a moment, as we get ready to start the meeting officially, you're going to be learning about the polling that we're going to be doing to gain your perspective, and the different places in the agenda where we're going to really want and benefit from your questions about what the different speakers and our different panels today will be sharing with you. Misty, how about if we move to our welcome slide? So welcome everyone who's here today with us for the first Early Care and Education Apprenticeship Roundtable. We're very, very excited to have you with us today. And I really wanted to start out our webinar today by thanking some of the partners, the most critical and important partners that have gotten us to this point, and to express our gratitude for them on behalf of ECIC's Child Care Innovation Fund. I want to thank our state and regional partners, including the Michigan Department of Education, the Michigan Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Department, including the Child Care Licensing Bureau, the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, the Michigan Association for the Education of Young Children, particularly the Teach Early Childhood Michigan Scholarship Program, the Michigan Works Association, Michigan Works agencies, apprenticeship success coaches, and business service specialists. I also want to thank and express gratitude to our technical assistance partners who have been working with us for many months to help make sure that the information and resources that we're providing to communities and organizations are helpful to them. And that includes Early Care and Education Pathways to Success, ESEPS, and Tara Dwyer, who's joining us here today as a moderator, the Great Start to Quality Southwest Resource Center, who was the early adopter on early care and education registered apprenticeship. You'll hear more about that. Steepletown Neighborhood Services, the YWCA of Kalamazoo, and the Kalamazoo Literacy Council. So today's webinar is scheduled to last up to 2 hours. The webinar is being recorded, and a link will be provided to everyone who attends today, including slides. And our webinar and the slides will also be posted on our website if you would like to share those with others. In order to have the best possible quality audio, we have muted participants, so you'll be muted throughout. You may submit all of your questions beginning even now through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And you will notice that questions that are submitted here can be viewed by everyone, and they can also be upvoted. If you see a question that you're like, oh, I really want to hear them answer that, upvote that so we know that that would be important for you. So our agenda today, we hope, will give an opportunity for you to, despite the fact that we are in webinar mode, to interact with us. So we've included 3 different polling opportunities where we'll be seeking your perspectives, and also several different places where you're able to ask questions and we will answer those. Any questions that we don't get to today, we will publish along with the slides and the webinar link, so that we'll do our best to make sure that everyone's questions are answered. After our first poll, we're going to do a little bit of introduction to ECIC's Child Care Innovation Fund and talk about what we've been learning. We're thrilled that we have 6 of Michigan's 7 early care and education registered apprenticeship sponsoring agencies here today for a panel. And they're going to be talking to you about the work that they've been doing and what they've been learning and how they really are supporting childcare employers and early educators throughout the state. Then we'll have time again for a poll and a Q&A session. And then we have our important state partners that are also here with us today that are going to be talking about some recommendations that we've made regarding early care and education registered apprenticeship and how they're contributing to helping those recommendations become a reality. We'll finish out with a final Q&A session and our last poll, and then we will be sharing contact information for everyone that presents on this webinar to help facilitate any kind of follow-up that you would like to make. For this section of the presentation and for overall, I am Joan Blau and I'm the Senior Director of the Child Care Innovation Fund, and I'm joined by my colleague. Misty, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, that'd be great. Thanks, Joan, for the opportunity to introduce myself. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining. My name is Misty Conley-Rogers. I am Project Manager with the Innovation Fund here at ECIC.
And the two of us will be serving as your overall hosts and also helping to facilitate through the different sections of the agenda so that we can help to ensure that this presentation is as interactive as possible. And I'm going to turn it over to Misty.
Great. Thanks again, Joan. Again, welcome and good afternoon, everyone. We're truly excited you've joined us today to listen, ask questions, gather information, and of course, learn in community with us. In fact, we're so thrilled to have you all here that we can't wait to learn more about the range of perspectives and roles represented in attendance today. So with that, let's launch our first of 3 polls to understand a bit more about you guys. Please take a minute when you see the poll launch to select the perspective you're representing today from the list of options in the poll. Once we hear from you all, we'll share those results. We're at about a 79%. Oh, and it's climbing 80% participation rate. Thank you, everyone.
We'd love to hear from everybody.
Yes, that's
If you haven't gotten in there, get in there.
A few more seconds to wrap up and get any last minute responses and selections in the poll. All right, I think that's a pretty good representation at 88%. Okay, we can share the results to that poll. Looks like we have quite a few educational representatives from educational institutions here at 28%. Trailing very closely behind is our community organization and partner representatives here. Thank you for joining us. Childcare employers, we're happy to have you here as well. Everyone represented, so happy you're joining us. Some apprenticeship sponsoring organizations, folks from the public workforce system at 3%, philanthropic partner as well, and some other. We're interested in knowing other, what that might mean to you. So feel free to reach out to us afterwards and share your perspective. We're interested to hear from you. All right, with that, we'll close that poll out and move right along. Hand it back to you, Joan.
Thank you. So I'm just going to start by, for those that may not be familiar, just doing a little brief overview of the Early Childhood Investment Corporation. So the Early Childhood Investment Corporation was established in 2005 through an interlocal agreement. And for the last 15 years, we've worked tirelessly, really, in service to childcare and the early education system in Michigan, as well as the other sectors. So we were created to be a statewide leader. And in order to do that, we work to increase public and private investment, like the work that we've been doing related to registered apprenticeship. We've been trying to, of course, elevate issues affecting young children and their families, and working continuously to improve Michigan's comprehensive early childhood system. In order to make our vision of all young children and their families in Michigan thriving, we work to ensure that race, culture, and community are celebrated assets in a young child's life. All of our work, including this apprenticeship work, is informed by research and driven by the voices of diverse populations with the goal of achieving equitable outcomes for all children. And collaboration, as I think is demonstrated by this webinar today, is central to our work, and we strive in all of our efforts to co-create knowledge and innovation for the field. In 2021, with a $3 million seed investment from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, for which we're extremely grateful, ECIC created the Child Care Innovation Fund. And the fund was created for three distinct purposes. One was to collaborate with regional and community partners to pilot common sense and financing solutions for childcare, like early care and education, registered apprenticeship. To invest in innovations designed to benefit employers, working families, childcare business owners, and early educators, of which registered apprenticeship is an excellent example. And to educate and advocate for scaling proven childcare solutions across Michigan. In 2022, the fund became a public-private partnership with a $12.9 million grant from the Michigan Department of Education as a part of the state's Caring for My Future initiative. This funding included the opportunity for the Innovation Fund to provide grants to local and community partners related to designing and scaling early care and education registered apprenticeships in Michigan. Caring for My Future is a incredibly important opportunity that ends at the end of September of 2024. So from the beginning of the receipt of these funds, ECIC has been working with national, state, and local partners, like the people that are featured in this webinar today, to build knowledge, understanding, and commitment to action so that all available federal and state resources for apprenticeship are more equitably available for the ECE sector. And our shared goal, shared by everyone that is on this presentation today, sharing with you, is that early care and education registered apprenticeships will continue when Caring for My Future initiative ends. The Child Care Innovation Fund has 5 priorities that we invest in, and all of those priorities center equity throughout. And in recognition of the knowledge and abilities necessary to be a highly skilled early educator, Michigan has been investing more in building a credentialed workforce. And that is true for the Innovation Fund as well. We know that improving compensation and on-the-job supports is critical for early educators. We also know that childcare business owners and nonprofit childcare organizations are extremely challenged, not only coming out of the pandemic, but certainly before the COVID-19 pandemic, to be able to offer the kind of wages and supports for professional learning that we know to produce highly skilled early educators we need. We know that today our field is challenged by low wages. The average hourly salary for an early educator in Michigan is $11.54 an hour. We know that we have compensation disparities and an unfortunate lack of advancement in the early care and education field. And we have ongoing challenges, particularly for women of color, that regardless of educational attainment are disproportionately undercompensated. So our work on registered apprenticeship is for us incredibly important at helping to tackle some of the most fundamental challenges the early care and education and childcare sector in particular experience, both in Michigan and nationally. One of the things that attracted us to want to invest in apprenticeship is the emphasis that it places on the importance of partnership. We know from our fundamental value for collaboration that partnership is crucial. And there's really nothing more important to registered apprenticeship for any industry than partnership. It's so important not to go it alone, that successful apprenticeships are born from collaborations amongst partners. And you're going to see as we share information with you and you have the opportunity to listen to the experiences of our current sponsoring agencies in Michigan, that partnership was a part of an incredibly important part of what makes their work successful. You can see from the graphic on the screen that at the center here, we have the sponsoring organization partner. You're going to be hearing more from those sponsoring organizations. And you can see displayed around that are the many other types of partners that provide critical supports and resources to both childcare employers and early educators. You're going to be hearing more today about the important contributions of our public workforce system, the Michigan Work System here in Michigan. And Leo, you're going to be learning a bit more about the funding partners that have contributed to the different apprenticeship programs across the state, including critically the Michigan Department of Education and this Caring for My Future grant that we have received. Training partners help to make sure that the important on-the-job learning and credentialing classes that are needed by early educators are provided. And at the heart and soul of all apprenticeship work are childcare employers. And so we'll be talking a little bit specifically more about them. In many communities, including the communities that the Innovation Fund has been investing in, the community organizational partners also provide tremendous levels of support, especially for non-academic needs that many early educators who are pursuing apprenticeship need. And then finally, we have our important state agency partners, some of whom you'll be hearing from today, and our federal partners at the US Department of Labor, because they oversee and help to regulate registered apprenticeship for all occupations in the United States. So you might be wondering, what are the components of registered apprenticeships? We're going to start by talking about employer involvement. So employer involvement, you can't have registered apprenticeship without employers. So employers have important roles to play. They have to agree to sponsor their apprentices. They support their on-the-job learning. They reward their skill gains with wage increases, and they provide apprentice candidates the opportunity to complete their credentials, because we don't want to just start people on the pathway to getting their credentials. We want to make sure that they're actually able to complete those credentials. Every registered apprenticeship includes structured on-the-job training. So an opportunity to actually earn and learn, and I'll be talking a little bit more specifically about that in a moment. And usually this learning is supported by a peer, a fellow teacher or lead teacher who's trained to act as a mentor or a coach. The third component of registered apprenticeships is related instruction. So all apprentices can complete either a CDA or an associate's degree from an institute of higher education. And ideally, what we would like to have available across the state in all of our early care and education registered apprenticeship programs is both of these pathways, a pathway to the CDA and a pathway to the AA. As I mentioned before, and what we think is one of the most important and incredibly compelling aspects of early care and education registered apprenticeship is that it actually acknowledges that what is being apprenticed is a highly skilled profession. We know that an early educator needs to be highly skilled. Unfortunately, our current average compensation doesn't reflect that. What we want to do is be able to use this registered apprenticeship work to be able to help us make progress across the state and get to more equitable compensation for everyone that is working as an early educator in Michigan. And then finally, the last component of registered apprenticeship is the earning of nationally recognized credentials. In Michigan, as you will see when we start reviewing what the sponsoring agencies are doing, the nationally recognized credentials that apprentices can earn are a CDA and an apprenticeship certificate, and an AA and an apprenticeship certificate. Those are two distinct credentials and would be recognized in any state in which an apprentice that might train in Michigan might choose to work. So these are credentials that have lasting value to the person that earns them. We're really excited to be sharing with you today a copy of the first of its kind report that the Child Care Innovation Fund had the opportunity to prepare as a part of this Caring for My Future initiative. This is the first state of the state report on the status of early care and education registered apprenticeship. One of the things that we learned in conducting our research for this report was that, for example, we had more sponsoring agencies than we had understood when the Innovation Fund made its initial application to the Michigan Department of Education. We've also learned a tremendous amount about some of the work and funding and policy of some of the state partners that you're going to hear from. And we also were able to identify some important challenges and opportunities to help make sure that the funding that we have received from Caring for My Future is able to be spent wisely and position early care and education registered apprenticeship to be able to be sustained. We hope that you will take the opportunity to spend some time with the report outside of this webinar, but you'll notice if you click on the link and page through that our webinar today is kind of following along through the report. So we're going to be trying to lift up the highlights and welcome you to enjoy the report in detail after the webinar. So what are some of the most important things we've learned? We were fortunate when the Innovation Fund was founded that we were able to invest very early on in two important projects related to early care and education registered apprenticeship. We funded the Steepletown Neighborhood Services as a sponsoring agency to continue some work that they had been doing in 19 neighborhoods in Grand Rapids. And that was very exciting to be able to become involved in as a partner in that work. And then we were also able to fund the Kalamazoo Literacy Council, which has been a critical partner in a specific neighborhood in Kalamazoo, the Edison neighborhood, in helping to bring non-traditional adult learners onto an apprenticeship pathway. So those early investments have really helped us understand some of the things that we think are critically important to keep in mind as we expand apprenticeship across the state. Of course, all apprenticeship programs have to have those 5 primary components that I talked about, and that was certainly true and remains true in both the Steepletown Apprenticeship Project and in the work that is being done through the Great Start to Quality Southwest Resource Center, which is the sponsoring agency with whom the Edison Neighborhood Project works with. One of the 3 other things that were learned from these initial investments that we will be helping to spread throughout the state. One of those is around shared business solutions for the childcare employers who are a part of these apprenticeship programs. So as a childcare employer, you are joining into an apprenticeship program knowing that there's going to be responsibilities for you to carry out. And of course, there are going to be gains that you are going to receive from your employees gaining their credentials and you gaining the support from a sponsoring agency. What we've also learned is that the childcare employers that are working in an apprenticeship partnership can gain a lot by working together to not only ensure the success of their apprentices, but to help each other help make your programs successful. Sometimes this work is called shared services. It might also be called an employer-based collaborative or collaboration. But what we've seen is where we have strong shared business solutions among childcare employers, apprenticeship programs are even stronger, and we're helping childcare employers to not only have access to the workforce they need, but also to be able to make improvements in some of their other business practices. Another key thing we learned is the critical importance of the on-the-job and wraparound services. So traditional educational pathways for early educators have primarily focused on academic supports. It wasn't that there were never non-academic supports available to early educators. It just wasn't necessarily baked in as a part of how the program was designed. And one of the things that we see with registered apprenticeship programs that we've been investing in is the critical importance of the non-academic support. So thinking about what I've shared about some of the challenges that we know that early educators in the state are facing, those wraparound supports, childcare for their own children, perhaps access to tutoring to be able to help them be able to take advantage of the learning opportunities, financial literacy, and other kinds of important resources and supports are critical to not only getting people started on the apprenticeship pathway, but helping people be able to persist for the long haul. As you'll hear in a moment, apprenticeship programs are typically to receive a certificate. You're typically compiling about 2,000 hours worth of learning and experiences. And so it's so essential that all the way along that pathway, whether it's the pathway to the CDA or the pathway to the AA, that you're receiving the kinds of supports and resources that early educators need to stay engaged. And then, of course, what we saw was crucially important was that the employers that were involved and the partnerships that were involved in these early apprenticeship programs that the Innovation Fund was funding was that they had a significant investment in assuring the wage gains and really looking at how to improve benefits for early educators. So what you see on the screen, and this is also in the report, is a visual of, so what does it actually look like, this apprenticeship pathway that I've been talking about. I'm going to touch on just a couple of things here that I think are critically important. So an early educator that is involved in an apprenticeship program is working a minimum of 32 hours a week and participating in on-the-job learning with their childcare employer. They're working overtime to complete their CDA requirements. All apprenticeship programs require at least one wage increase during the time the apprentice is in the program. Typically, these are attached to skills gained. For example, completion of the CDA might be a reason that a wage increase would occur. Once the person has completed all their CDA requirements, of course, they have to apply to start the CDA awards process. And the Teach Early Childhood Michigan scholarship can cover this cost. And Kelsey will touch more on that later. And then When the apprentice has accumulated their full 2,000 hours for a program that's defined for 2,000 hours, that includes all their on-the-job training, all the CDA training, the competency development, their reflective supervision, the paid work experience, then there's actually an application made for them for their apprenticeship certificate. One of the things that we want to see spread throughout the state is we have apprenticeship programs now that you'll be hearing more about that have 9 credits that they're giving towards an associate's degree for CDA completion. We wanted to be able to give a visual here of ultimately where do we have coverage and where do we not have coverage. So I'm going to just briefly explain, and the same visual is in the report. So we have 14 regions for the Michigan Works entities. Those are defined by the numbers. We have 7 current sponsoring agencies. These are all agencies who have worked with partners, designed their apprenticeship programs, and then submitted their standards for approval to the U.S. Department of Labor. And you can see that we do have some areas of the state where we do not yet have coverage. Those are in white. You'll be hearing more about what we're doing to help to bring color, so to speak, to all of those areas in the latter part of this presentation. I'm going to briefly just walk you through each of our sponsoring agencies, and I'm going to keep it really high level because I want you to be able to hear directly from them. In the report, we prepared a graphic like this for each of the sponsoring agencies. So on the left side, you can see for the Great Start to Quality Southwest Resource Center, there are many, many partners. This is the first ECE registered apprenticeship program established in Michigan. It has been active since 2018. Individuals are on a CDA pathway. They provide that 9 credits that I was talking to you about towards an associate degree, and they're currently working with 67 childcare employers. And we have Steepletown Neighborhood Services, came online in 2019. They're also integrating a pre-apprenticeship step into their pathway, currently working with 10 childcare employers, and again, have a list of a variety of apprenticeship partners that all contribute to their success. Childcare Network has been active since 2023. They are currently working with 4 childcare employers. Michigan Works, Networks Northwest. So one of the things that we learned in the research for this report was that we had Michigan Works entities who were already sponsoring early care and education registered apprenticeships. We were so excited to find that out and are looking forward to working closely with these Michigan Works agencies going forward. This apprenticeship program has been active since 2022. They're working with 1 employer, but this employer has 36 locations. You'll note that this sponsoring agency is sponsoring both for the CDA and AA, and they are sponsoring for 2 occupations, both the early childhood educator and the child care development specialist. And I do want to note they also have a youth career pathway. Michigan GST, Michigan Works, has been active since 2021. This is an AA-focused apprenticeship program and is currently working with 2 childcare employers. Upper Peninsula Michigan Works has been active since 2021. Both a CDA or AA are available. They have a youth apprenticeship pathway, and they're currently working with 12 childcare employers, including 6 school districts. And Michigan Works Region 7B, active since 2023, includes youth apprenticeship, both the CDA and the AA, and they are working with 58 childcare employers. And I am going to turn it over to you, Misty.
Thank you, Joan, for introducing all of us to the sponsoring agency organizations from a high level. We're so excited to learn more from the sponsoring agency representatives that have joined us today during the upcoming panel. But before we get started, let's learn a bit more from our audience with our next poll. We'll launch that now so that you can share what you're most excited to learn about from our sponsoring agency panelists today. All right, just a few more seconds to let anyone else who is finishing up their answer enter into the poll. All right. Well, looks like we got about 82% participation. Very exciting. What I love to see is that everyone wants to know something about everything that was presented in the poll. There's a big interest, though, in how community partners can get involved and the roles that they can play. Of course, benefits to childcare employers of such innovation with the ECE wraps, then benefits to early educators of those ECE wraps, and also wraparound supports wanting to know more about that. With that, I will pass facilitation on over to today's sponsoring agency panel moderator, Tara Dwyer from ESEPS. Hey, Tara, I think you might be on mute. I haven't heard you yet, but.
Still, right? 3 years in. Apologize.
Happens to all of us still.
Thank you, Misty. I appreciate the opportunity to join Michigan in this exciting work. And I've really been looking forward to hearing directly from Michigan's leaders that are implementing ECU apprenticeships. I know the experience and knowledge of this group is really a gem of the state. And so I'm going to offer the opportunity to everybody who's on the call to add their own questions that they would like us to answer or respond to. I have a couple to get us started, but you can add yours to the Q&A box, and then we'll be sure to save some time at the end for that to happen. So I'm going to dive right in. We're running a little short on time. And Amy, since you were the first to implement in the state, I thought I would start with you. It seems like you're an early adopter. So thank you for that. What things were you seeing and experiencing that let you know registered apprenticeship was the correct move for the workforce?
We noticed that we were dealing with a real shortage of early childhood workers specifically in our Kalamazoo County was where it originally had begun. So it was really a collaboration of many Kalamazoo partners that came together and worked on this. And being that for us, for the Resource Center, we were already implementing and teaching the CDA hybrid course that we have. It just was a real natural fit for us to have the registered apprenticeship standards.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. Dick, let's move on to you. As a community-based organization, how did you decide to become a sponsor agency?
Good afternoon, everyone. So we became a preschool site in 2013. We're primarily a workforce development organization. We partner with West Michigan Works, primarily focused on youth and young adults, 18 to 24. Fast forward to 2018, we got 4 classrooms open, and like everybody else, coverage when teachers are out, a constant challenge. But we had a solution because we have these young adults who need a paid work experience. So we asked around who wants to go into a classroom with preschoolers and check out to see if maybe you want to do early childhood education or become a teacher, early elementary, whatever. So that was successful. It's like, okay, so how do we build on this and make this a 6-month opportunity? We, in 2018, 2019, apprenticeships were starting to be recognized as a viable training pathway, especially, the trades, construction, medical, manufacturing. So we jumped on it and brought together employer partners. Again, this is employer driven. We're an employer. And that's what I appreciate about West Michigan Works, because that's the emphasis, employer driven solutions. And so we walked out of a meeting in the late spring of 2019. And the apprenticeship success coordinator from West Michigan Works walked out with me, and she said, "Dick, why don't we're busy, too busy. Why doesn't Steepletown be the sponsor?" And we I guess we can. I mean, we had some more things to learn, but we took it on primarily because we wanted to see this succeed. We saw the value of it at our own preschool, and it's like, we got to do this. We've uncovered a lot of great resources to continue to support apprentices, especially funding opportunities. And just to fast forward to today, that pre-apprenticeship component that Joan talked about. So we have what's called parents partnering as teachers. We've got a training track coming up starting next week, 12 hours classroom instruction with a couple of great trainers connected with my registry, so they get CEUs if they need credit, but also in the classroom, and they'll get $300 stipend for participating. We have 7 of our parents who are going to be doing this because they see this as a great opportunity to jump or stay in the workforce and be able to be in a classroom as a teacher in training. So it's awesome. So we do this because we got to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Dick. And Pam, a question for you that's similar. As Michigan Works agency, why did you decide to become a sponsoring agency for EC registered apprenticeships?
Well, essentially, in the post-pandemic, we had heard from a lot of our employers that they're experiencing challenges with hiring people back to work due to a lack of childcare services. And we just kind of looked around and saw, within our own communities that a lot of the childcare providers had closed up shop, retired, and that type of thing, same as everyone else. It was actually a real natural fit for us to become a sponsoring agency, especially because of the childcare piece. We were already kind of leaning towards that, but then we had the opportunity to partner with several of our business services team. Were involved in the First Finance project, which did a lot of surveys in our communities, and the Great Start to Quality program in Aranac, Iosco, and Ogama counties. And there was a lot of other activities happening with childcare educators and childcare providers in Clare County, and many other great partners. So it really was a great time and a good fit for us to move forward, become an intermediary, and make all those connections. We have already been working in the apprenticeship space, working with many other employers. We discovered that post-pandemic, apprenticeship really was a great tool to connect employers to some of the talent pipelines, such as the high school career tech education programs. And we had already been collaborating with many of these programs to align their curriculum to existing apprenticeships. So it just was a great fit to be able to take the whole childcare apprenticeship piece and streamline that right into what we were already doing. And just timing was epic. And we have since set up some apprenticeships. We have one employer who has, I think she has 4 different locations. So we're really excited to see that take off.
Great. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Ellen, I have an employer question for you too. As Joan said earlier, we know that the employers are really the heart and soul of every registered apprenticeship program. So can you talk a little bit about your approach with childcare employers and how you do your outreach and recruitment?
Sure. We feel that our most impactful tool for engaging employers is really becoming a U.S. Department of Labor intermediary and sponsor. This helps streamline the process for all the employers. And we believe in meeting employers and apprentices where they are. So we will hold lunch and learns or informational sessions, even in our rural locations. We invite other employers to come to those and participate on an expert panel. That way the business can talk to another business and share some of the challenges and successes in those conversations. We also invite employers to one-on-one conversations at their job site. So we work in the field a lot, and we customize those conversations to that particular employer and their particular workforce needs. We also host mentor and apprentice orientations in the field and at the job site, and we have found this is a fantastic way to remove any transportation barriers or, reduce the time barrier as well for those types of meetings. And overall, our team really focuses on that barrier identification and barrier removal for both the employer and the apprentice. And we do that through our wraparound services.
Great, thank you. Carla, we have a lot of childcare employers on this webinar today. You all are probably really wondering why you should be considering partnering in an EC apprenticeship program. So Carla, what would you say to childcare employers who are wondering about the benefits and how they would become involved in EC apprenticeships?
Okay, sure. So, well, if you are a childcare employer, you probably already know that the talent pipeline for childcare can be very difficult to navigate. Not only are we finding less applicants to fill positions, but we're finding less applicants with experience and knowledge. So in our previous innovation work with ECIC, we did some consulting with center directors around recruitment and retention of staff. And what we found was that directors were struggling with onboarding of new staff, and this is for several reasons. But one that stood out was the fact that new staff needed to be in classrooms right away and often did not get prior training. So this puts new staff in a position to basically just survive in a classroom. So this, of course, is never the intention in any program, and we know that's not what any program wants to do, but it does happen. However, if your new staff becomes an apprentice at the time of hire, the director can focus on the onboarding process while the apprentice receives ongoing training and learning through their apprenticeship program. And they will also have a mentor on site for support. So we also have found that new employees with no experience who enter into a new position in this way, the way that I just mentioned, they stay in a childcare position for about 90 days. And the reason for this is that they don't know what they're doing, and it's overwhelming. And programs generally have very good intentions and definitely want the best for their staff. We know that. But where do you find the time to teach all of the necessary things to help this new staff member to be successful and keep them employed and make them feel supported? And it can be overwhelming as a director too. So also, many apprenticeship programs are designed to provide free or low-cost learning options in a variety of ways. So for example, at Childcare Network, we can connect the apprentice to a local community college for their classroom training hours, but we're also building an apprenticeship program that allows us to provide these trainings for free because we're also a registered training organization. We're also able to offer a CDA track at no cost, including books and resources to build their professional portfolios so that they can earn an early childhood certification early on in the apprenticeship program. And we're also able to provide the remaining apprenticeship training hours at no cost through our organization. And there are some who will prefer to enroll in college for their training hours, but what we're finding is that there are many who do not see themselves as college students yet, or are not able to enroll in college for whatever reason, but they want a career in early childhood. So we need to support these folks as well to continue to build a strong talent pipeline. So I hope as an employer in the early childhood field, you can see that there's many reasons to partner in a registered apprenticeship program.
Thank you, Carla. We have one more question for Brian, but I just want to remind everybody that there's some time for Q&A. So get your questions into the chat, not into the chat box, the Q&A box, but that would help things. So Brian, we know early educators have been challenged by time and cost to afford the credentialing that the field requires. How is your apprenticeship pathway helping to address these barriers and challenges?
Well, you're certainly right. There's no shortage of challenges to becoming an early childhood educator. So Upper Peninsula Michigan Works has focused much of our efforts on providing stackable incentives for individuals of all ages to consider this career pathway. The greatest challenge in many cases is the earnings potential of an educator in comparison to some easily obtainable jobs. So we always begin by emphasizing the difference between a career versus a job. And we also show candidates a clear pathway to this critically important profession and how we can assist each candidate as they progress up that career ladder. In addition to traditional funding sources such as the Teach Scholarship, Upper Peninsula Michigan Works has a number of other funding sources that we can tap into, hopefully get our educators as far as they want to go at as little or no cost to them and their employer. Although wages may be less than they might earn at a job, the value of the credentials and the college degrees that they will earn, on our ECE career ladder amounts to much greater value in the long run. And again, a career versus a job. Our additional funding sources allow an individual to move at a pace that fits their life best and to maintain a manageable work-life balance, especially for those who have a family at home. Upper Peninsula Michigan Works has a special focus on youth apprenticeship, including high school youth apprenticeship. So we're working closely with our school districts across the peninsula and our state's high school CT education programs, which can help our high school candidates progress up the career ladder at an even earlier age. At the same time, these students can be employed for part of the school day, giving them the opportunity to earn while they learn. Upper Peninsula Michigan Works is also uniquely positioned, just as Evelyn said, to provide support services to our apprentices through our talent staff who have years of experience assisting individuals and helping them persist and succeed in the workplace. And our funding sources, of course, also cover other needs, just as Evelyn mentioned again, barriers to employment such as transportation issues. So we're really excited about what we can offer. And in addition to that, we can also offer some great technical tools like Raptor, which is a phone app from WorkHands, which provides an easy way for our apprentices to track their progress and really prompt some rich discussion with their mentors in terms of that progress.
Great, thank you. So we do have a question from the audience. The first one is, what kind of academic or non-academic needs do you all use to help apprentices navigate the process? And I know we talked about some of them, but I was wondering if anybody heard something or didn't hear something that they would like to kind of follow up with. No one wants to respond?
So I'm wondering, Evelyn or Brian in particular, are there particular things, or Dick, that you've helped apprentices with that are either academic or non-academic that you haven't shared yet specifically?
We help apprentices with all sorts of different support services, depending on their specific barrier. Our team is cross-trained and they work directly with each individual apprentice. So one apprentice may need work shoes, another apprentice may need fuel assistance, and it all depends on that particular person, but also whether or not they're eligible for some of our funding sources. But there is a wide range of different types of support services that our Michigan Works office provides. I know Brian provides some of the very similar services. And we really base it on that person, and each of our services is customized that way.
And I'll address our
students.
We're very fortunate. Most of our high school programs, CT programs, partner with Bay Mills Community College, and they have a tremendous support system for all of their students. This is remote learning, which we know can be a challenge to some students. But in addition to the supports that Bay Mills Community College provides our high school students, each of our high school programs has that that teacher in the classroom with the students to address any academic needs that they might have, and obviously to connect them to other educators who can address any weaknesses that they witness.
I just wanted to add that since most of the coursework is virtual learning, we have a couple of apprentices who have been stuck because their computers have gone south. So we find a way to make sure that they get a new computer. So that tool is critically important, right? So thank you, ECIC, for connecting us to funding, and Michigan Works. Yes.
That's great. We do have another question about youth apprenticeship and the work requirements. Dick, I know you mentioned working with youth. Anybody else working with youth that wants to respond to the work requirements for youth apprenticeship?
Well, in our world, it's I know that licensing has reduced the age, so you can have somebody 16 in the room or in a room with kiddos as part of the teaching team, kind of a pre-apprenticeship space. I know the CTEs are doing this. So was that the MICE training back in April? So there's some creative things happening in that space. What we've been able to do, and we wrote it into our standards, is that the person does not have to have their high school diploma done. They can be dual enrolled. So especially for adult learners, that's important because many of them haven't finished high school. So they can be working on their GED simultaneous to working on their CDA and being in the classroom. So I love, as Brian mentioned, that life-work balance. We got to get people in the classroom teaching and earning a paycheck. It's the only way they're going to do it. So we got to make this doable. So yeah.
So there was another question about the hourly wage of apprentices. And I think the challenge with kind of throwing that out to the group is that it would be really various depending upon the location in the state and the kind of employer and the funding. So I think we just have to remember that each employer really does what they can. And the important part about apprenticeship is that there is a pathway to increasing that compensation by the end of the credentialing process. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Joan, did I miss anything?
Yeah, so another question that's come in is around how the apprenticeship certificate provides opportunities that the CDA certificate alone does not. And I'm wondering if we have a sponsoring agency that might be willing to speak to that. So help our audience understand the benefit of both of these certificates.
This is Pam. I'm going to say a lot of it is based upon the work that we're doing with the career tech education programs. And I heard a lot of that from our partners. And I think that just somebody having that apprenticeship is going to make those students a little bit more aware of the talent pipeline that's being developed for them. So those students will seek out those apprenticeships first versus just getting that CDA, because it's already a automatic talent pipeline to those employers. The other thing is, I think that those employers have an opportunity to pay a little bit more because they're getting some of the support of the education paid for, some of the on-the-job training potentially paid for. So there could be an opportunity for a little bit higher wages.
And to second what Pam mentioned, when it's a U.S. Department of Labor registered apprenticeship program, the employers can advertise their openings for those apprenticeship opportunities and use that terminology, which helps with the recruitment of apprentices into those in-demand workforce gaps. The other thing is the registered apprenticeship is a longer term training than just a CDA. And so it's more comprehensive. There are more skills, more education built into that registered apprenticeship. And it's just a fantastic way for a person to walk away with 2 credentials that are lifetime achievements. And having that national credential is really an honor. That's what we have found. Our apprentices they are very respectful that that credential is coming from the U.S. Department of Labor.
Great. And it looks like if we have time, there's one more question that just came in. The question is there additional funding available to centers to help bolster funds and increase pay for staff? So anybody have experience with the workforce dollars?
I'm going to talk about just very briefly to say we're going to be talking a bit more about this, but for the funding that the Innovation Fund is providing to sponsoring agencies, there is an opportunity to provide both employer and early educator incentives.
Great.
Yeah, we've been working with West Michigan Works with the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity for the Going Pro Talent Fund, and they keep getting it right and better. So our 4 apprentices here at the Early Learning Center, I was able to capture $3,000 of reimbursement for training costs for the fall, and now an additional $3,500 per apprentice in the spring. So you do the math, and that's pretty significant. So you add that to the money we had anyways in our budget for a floater position, which is part-time, right? Now we just created 4 full-time positions, apprentices in the classroom, 3rd teacher, who now, so we never had to have closed our doors this year at all, any classroom. Parents love it. And we've got 4 people who are finishing their CDAs and appreciate this profession. So we'll hope to build on that piece. But yeah, Going Pro Talent Fund, it's real, and there's some great money there.
And we definitely encourage our employers to work with their local Michigan Works office to see what type of apprenticeship funding and rateable funds there are, like the Going Pro Talent Fund, because some of that can be stacked. And that is absolutely a huge benefit to the employers. It can mean, in our region, it can mean sometimes over $5,000 per apprentice. So there are a lot of funds out there, and you just have to touch base with your Michigan Works office to find out what's available.
I think we're ready to wrap up the panel, Sarah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joan, for inviting us. And I am happy to hear the voice of those who are implementing being shared and all of their great experience.
So we are going to be moving into the next segment of our time together and doing a couple of different panels and presentations with our state partners. We will have another opportunity for questions and answers, so please feel free to continue to put those into the Q&A, and we'll be coming back to them. I want to just take a brief opportunity to introduce the different state partners you're going to be hearing from. Lisa Brewer-Walraven, who's the director of the Office of Great Start Child Development and Care at the Michigan Department of Education. Robin Zeider, who's the professional development specialist at the Office of Great Start at the Michigan Department of Education. Kelsey Laird, who's the director of professional programs at the Michigan Association for the Education of Young Children. Brian Hunt, the Chief Executive Officer of the Michigan Works Association, and Kevin Chow, who's the Apprenticeship Specialist, Workforce Development, State Apprenticeship Expansion, Employment, and Training at the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Development. We're excited for you to hear from them, and then myself. So if you've been following along with the report, you'll know that we have some different recommendations that we made as a result of doing the report. And I'm going to be talking about our 3 initial recommendations. And happy to invite coming on screen Lisa and also Kevin to join Ryan and I as I'll do these, and then we'll move to our state partner panel. So what did we recommend? So we recommended the strengthening of the implementation of the existing 7 early care and education registered apprenticeship programs, to offer them one-time scale-up grants and some technical assistance, and to support the development of regional financing plans. We also recommended in areas of the state that had ready apprenticeship designs that we should offer some additional design grants to those entities. If you think back to the map that I showed you, you saw there were some white spaces on there. We said we should put some funding towards that so that we can make sure that any childcare employer that is interested in registered apprenticeship could approach a Michigan Works entity because of the incredible valuable resources and supports that they can bring, as you've been hearing. And if we had any Michigan Works entities that were not included in recommendations 1 and 2, we wanted to be sure that we were able to provide a grant opportunity to them to design registered apprenticeship for their area. So what that looks like is we've invited to apply for design grants the Michigan Works entities listed here. Those invitations were issued on May 15th. These folks are working on their applications. We anticipate announcing recipients of these dollars. Our goal is to provide design grants to all of these Michigan Works entities if they're interested in receiving them. And then we will be working with them over the next year through the use of these one-time grant dollars with the goal of launching registered apprenticeship programs in all of these areas. We also invited to apply for scale-up grants, all of the sponsoring agencies. 2 of those have already received their funding, Steepletown Neighborhood Services in the Kent County and Great Start to Quality Southwest Resource Center for their area. The other Michigan Works and early childhood organizations that are noted here have been invited to apply for scale-up grants. Based on the results of our research to produce this report, it was our perspective, which has been adopted by the partners who will be talking next, that we thought that Michigan Works agencies should have the opportunity to take a continue the leadership role that they are already showing in registered apprenticeship for many other occupations, and to really bring that leadership, the funding and the policy that they have within their organization in connection with LEO to these grant opportunities to help to ensure, as I said at the very beginning, that when these Caring for My Future dollars are exhausted, that we will still be able to have early care and education registered apprenticeship programs in this state. So my colleagues are here to help talk about recommendation number 4, where we recommended how important it is to continue and strengthen collaboration among the Michigan Departments of Education, Labor, and Economic Development, Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and the Michigan Works Association, and the Early Childhood Investment Corporation. So I'm going to invite Misty to take down the slides, and I invite Kevin to come on camera. And the questions that I'm going to be asking each of you to answer is, what is your organization contributing to this collaboration that I'm talking about? And what's the impact that you're hoping for from this collaboration? And I'm going to start with you, Lisa, because you helped to see the opportunity for us to even get to this point through the Michigan Department of Ed.
Thanks, Joan. Happy to be here this afternoon. Glad we have so many people who joined to learn. I think the Department of Education has been very excited about this opportunity. Like Joan said, we kind of gave some funding to give it a push, but as this work continues, we really see ourselves as being the link that continues to bring together partners to break down barriers. So as we continue to hear about the implementation, we hear about challenges, and we want to make sure that we're really creating opportunities to be inclusive and to ensure that the early childhood workforce is aligned with other efforts that are happening in the field and across the state. So we want to maximize resources and continue to expand partnerships to make sure that happens.
Thanks, Lisa. So Ryan, I'm going to turn to you. What is the Michigan Works Association contributing to this collaboration, and what's the impact that you're hoping for from that?
Sure. Thank you, Joan. Good afternoon, everyone. So great to be with many of you today, and awesome turnout for this convening. So our role at the Michigan Works Association, you've heard already from a handful of our members and Michigan Works agencies across the state in terms of what they're doing right now for early child care apprenticeships and some steps that they've taken collectively and individually as organizations to help support these efforts. And so our role at the association is similar to our role on a number of other fronts in the workforce space, and that's really to serve as a convener of information and resources in connecting with Joan, you and your team, Kevin's team, Lisa's team, and many others across the state to ensure that folks from the Michigan Works system, whether they are already doing this work right now, in the case of some folks that have been on this call today, or in the case where right now maybe they're only convening community partners, but they want to elevate that role to the next level in terms of maybe being an intermediary or taking other steps to ensure that their regions have the support and the infrastructure needed for early child care apprenticeships. We are there to serve as that convener to help share information, to get people into the right room and really build a bigger table at the end of the day so that we can all sit around and collaborate with one another to make this a successful model, not just regionally, but statewide. And hopefully that statewide model will also be replicated in other parts of the country where we know childcare is a significant demand, and not only childcare itself for job seekers and workers, but childcare workforce in particular is of critical importance for our state's economy.
Thank you, Ryan, and really appreciate the acknowledgement of the opportunity to improve conditions for these occupations that we're apprenticing for early care and education. Kevin, I'm going to turn to you. What is Leo contributing to this collaboration thus far, and what's the impact that you're hoping for as an organization by working with this collaboration?
Okay, cool. Well, Joan, thanks for the invitation, opportunity to be here. Got a little bit of allergy, so apologies if my voice isn't clear. I got, so it's kind of like going through my nose here. But so with Leo WD, one of the things that we have been very fortunate to have is a lot of investments coming from our state legislators to expand registered apprenticeship, in addition to all federal grants from USDOL ETA. So in the next 2 years, we have 3 existing federal grants that are up to $25 million. Each of the grants have a specific focus. One grant is the Michigan Youth Apprenticeship Readiness Network grant, and that's focused on bringing in youth between 16 and 24 into registered apprenticeship programs. Another one is the migraine, that is a lot more focused on development of programs, but also opportunities to provide the training reimbursements for employers. And then the last one is the MySeries, which is focused on expanding registered apprenticeship opportunities to individuals in DEIA with disability, inclusion, accessibility, and equity. So those are grants that are specific to target audience, but what they all do is that they provide employer tuition reimbursements to mitigate the cost of the training. So those are some examples, but with the federal grants that we have, we're also able to provide registered apprenticeship technical assistance, working with our federal partners with the Michigan Office of Apprenticeship, along with working with our local partners, obviously with Michigan Works agencies, along with educators that provides the RTI. And then also some of that funding provides outreach and awareness to the public, because I think that is something that is still a low-hanging fruit that we still need to be able to do. But I think all of the investments that we have coming from state and federal, what we're hoping is that it's a long-term sustainability. We're hoping that ECE employers will look at registered apprenticeship training as one of their many toolbox for their talent pipeline development. And I think some of the values comment is like some of the panelists before, it's that it's customized training for the employer. It also on the participant side is the earn and learn type of approach, and you will have minimal to no education costs as part of your training. And at the end, you have a credential from USDOL. So those are some of the added values. But overall, hoping that for ECE employers that are on this webinar today, that you see some of the benefits and values. The other thing that Scott wanted me to add on too is that there is braided funding amongst the multiple grants. So we had a gentleman that talked about the talent fund. So the talent fund is the state funded grant for employer training or upskilling their incumbent employees. That grant funding can be braided along with our federal grants. So there's more grant funds that help support to mitigate that cost. So hopefully we'll get more momentum and engagement. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Hoping we'll just say a few words about the Investment Corporation and then kind of summarize this section. So we are contributing to this collaboration right now. Anyway, we're doing grant making through Caring for My Future to help to support the design of early care and registered apprenticeships in all the areas of Michigan where they don't currently exist, and are excited to be working with the Michigan Works entities in those areas and their apprenticeship partners for this one-year grant opportunity. And then also with the scale-up grantees and being able to provide them with a one-time grant opportunity to really scale up the work that they're doing, to bring on new employers, to really address some of the challenges that they have faced, and to move towards some collective work related to regional financing plans so that we maximize all these resources you've been hearing us talk about in every region for every apprentice and for every childcare employer. And as Kevin said, and I could just do a little cheer, our whole goal here is that what we're building is a sustainable workforce development strategy that really recognizes the importance of the childcare employer, the childcare industry, and early educators, and brings public workforce dollars, both state and federal, to that, and is no longer just dependent on early childhood funding to help us build the workforce that we need. So the Investment Corporation, as I said at the top, has had a focus always on increasing investment and ensuring equitable opportunity. And we really see this apprenticeship work as just a prime example of what that can look like. So thank you to my fellow panelists. And I'm going to ask Ms. D to take us back into presentation mode. And we're going to look at our last recommendation, which is around the importance of continuing these efforts that we've just been talking about to realize more effective long-term compensation strategies and to include the recognition of apprenticeship certification on the ECE career pathway in my registry. So I'm going to turn it over to Robin first, and then Kelsey will follow.
Great. Thanks, Joan. It's great to be here today, and it is wonderful to see so many people interested in this topic. So I'm just going to start with just a quick mention of my registry and what that's about. So my registry is the Professional Workforce Registry for ECE, which is early childhood educators and out of school time professionals. This registry was launched in May 2018, and I really want us to think about that word professional workforce registry. Early childhood educators are part of a profession. And my registry really was an opportunity to take an entire professional development system and sort of house that in this professional workforce registry. So the registry collects and tracks data, including employment, education, credentials, wage and retention information to inform workforce policy decisions, again, around this profession. In fact, just recently, probably within the last 6 months, the governor's office actually requested data on our very, very, very important workforce. The registry also approves trainers and course content to support workforce professional development. And so for those of you that have less familiarity, That course content approval is based on competency or core knowledge and competencies for the early childhood workforce or the out of school time workforce, depending on whether the audience is, again, that early childhood side or that out of school time side. And then the piece that the registry does that's really important to the work that we're talking about today, and something that was introduced when the registry was introduced, is a career pathway. So my registry awards career pathway levels to its members. And we can go to the next slide. So Michigan launched a career pathway for early childhood and out of school time professionals. Again, critical that we use that word professionals because this is part of a profession. And our career pathway in the state that has been developed includes sequential levels that start at a real foundational level and then move that individual through a series of professional levels. Each person that submits information to the registry for verification, and that would include official transcript if relevant, professional development either taken within the registry or outside of the registry, any credentials that they have earned, all of that lives sort of in a professional portfolio or online file about that professional, and it's verified, that information is verified and then added to that profile. When we think about a career pathway, it's really a tool. It's a tool that recognizes and acknowledges individuals for their accomplishments. And then it can also support that individual in identifying career goals and particular kind of next possible employment or growth opportunities as part of their professional journey. And we can go to the next slide. So I mentioned starts with 3 foundational levels, and that first is a really basic obtaining membership in my registry. Again, that membership piece is free, and folks just go through a process of submission and uploading and entering information about they themselves or as a professional. It then moves to kind of an initial 60 unduplicated training or professional development hours aligned to the core knowledge and core competencies. And then sort of that third foundational level begins to introduce college credit as part of an option for meeting that level, or again, another bump in that unduplicated training hour piece. So we can look at the next piece. And as you saw in recommendation 5, there was an importance to really recognizing the registered apprenticeship completion certificate. That's a mouthful. And as Joan mentioned, we have 2 models currently in Michigan around registered apprenticeship. One involves the completion of a CDA along that pathway to the registered apprenticeship certificate. The second involves the earning of an associate degree along the way to that professional apprenticeship certificate. And so what we've done, and we did this intentionally, we sort of wanted to highlight or feature and pull out that apprenticeship into sort of its own color and its own thing, because we know that it really focuses on kind of more than just that P1 or just that P2 based on the mentorship and the experience hours and the on-the-job training and the education along the way. And we know that that person would have either completed a CDA plus this certificate or an AA plus the certificate. So this is a draft, and this is where we have included this on the current career pathway. Something you should know about the career pathway is that there's also kind of an accompanying piece around opportunities based on those sort of credentials and education levels or sequential pieces on the career pathway that lives on the back of the actual document. I think our career pathway, the time is ripe to sort of really think about ways to continue to expand, build out those career opportunities, really think through the continued alignment with licensing and Great Start to Quality and the system as a whole. So what you see in front of you is what we have done at this moment to recognize apprenticeship, again, at the P1 plus and the P2 plus. So the professional level 1 or the professional level 2. We can go to the next slide. So one thing I want to mention, and this QR code hopefully will work, and if not, I will be sure to share the webpage with Joan and Misty. But we have really built a career pathway page in the system and continue to add to that. And certainly knowing how critical the apprenticeship piece and the addition of apprenticeship to the career pathway, I think there'll be opportunities to really lace that throughout the career pathway webpage as well. So that webpage has kind of a breakdown of each of those levels. It includes the career opportunities. There's a video about the career pathway. There are also job opportunities, and there's an early childhood careers guide that Michigan AUIC and Teach have shared. So again, lots of opportunities to really build out and continue to immerse folks in understanding around the early childhood and out of school time career pathway. We're going to continue, as I said, to add and build to that page, and we'll certainly update the resources to recognize that apprenticeship piece and that role that apprenticeship plays in really developing a quality, highly qualified professional workforce.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Robin. Exciting forecasted news. And we're going to turn it over to Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Joan. I have to say it's just really exciting to be here and to hear about all of the supports that are available, the funding, the student supports. Teach is, just one of those education and funding supports that lives within the apprenticeship toolbox. Teach is a scholarship initiative. It's actually a national scholarship initiative, and we administer the scholarship here in Michigan through the Michigan Association for the Education of Young Children, and we are one of 26 states that provides scholarship assistance using the Teach model. It's a comprehensive student support model and a wage strategy. So we know that recipients going through the Teach model are seeing an increase in wages 29% more than the statewide average, and they see a personal wage increase by about 16% over the course of their scholarship. They also see an increase in retention. So the model itself is a collaborative scholarship where the funding source, or Teach, the recipient, which would be the apprentice in this case, and their employer or sponsoring agency contribute a portion of the costs of pursuing the degree or credential. So we see not only an increase in their wages, but also in retention, so that an additional investment in the scholarship recipient creates a reduction in turnover. Our Teach recipient turnover rate is at about 3.85%, where we know the statewide average is closer to 30%. Teach is a cost-sharing model, as I mentioned, but there are a variety of scholarship models within the Teach model itself. So it's not sort of a one-size-fits-all funding mechanism, which, as we are learning more and more about apprenticeships, and as we heard from all our partners here today, each apprenticeship is certainly unique. And so the scholarship model that might fit or align with the individual apprentice model can vary. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Misty. This is the variety, sort of the spectrum of scholarship support available. These are primarily to credit-bearing scholarships, so support for one course, and that could just be an infant toddler curriculum course, perhaps an administrator course, or a set of courses that would fulfill a specific licensing requirement. The CDA training for college credit scholarship, that is along the associate's degree pathway. So our community colleges here in Michigan most offer a pathway to the associate's degree through CDA, and that the number of credit hours that are required to complete that training does vary, but they all fulfill the 120 clock hour requirement for the CDA. If those training hours are taken for college credit, the Teach Scholarship can go ahead and cover the cost of those dependent on the scholarship model. The CDA assessment and renewal, as well as the MyYDA credential and renewal scholarship supports, are sort of an end scholarship support where we're not providing scholarship assistance to cover the cost of tuition or the training. So some of those apprentice models that might be utilizing their own, or what we refer to as community-based versus credit-bearing training models for the CDA or MyYDA credentials, we can still provide that financial support as well as the navigation support in completing those assessment pieces for both the CDA and MyYDA, regardless of where the training is taken. So those pieces cover 85% of the credential cost for the CDA or MyYDA. And we provide that support to the high school students as well. So students coming through career tech ed programs, perhaps on an apprenticeship model, are eligible to utilize that MyYDA or CDA assessment or renewal scholarship support. Those do come with the benefit of a bonus as well. So even though there is not an ongoing semester support, which I'll kind of discuss what those additional pieces look like for student supports in a traditional scholarship model, the students using our scholarship for the assessment piece do still earn a bonus. So we're seeing wage increases through that bonus award for the teach piece on those. Leading into the associate's degree coursework, again, the teach model varies there. We offer a traditional scholarship model where the scholarship itself is providing 80% of the tuition fees and books. The student would provide 10% and their employer sponsor the remaining 10%. I'll get into a few of our student supports that sort of decrease or negate those cost in models. We also offer a stipend-based scholarship model, which is a per credit dollar amount awarded for both the associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree. I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So in addition to the tuition support, which for the most part is 80% of the total tuition for up to 6 credit hours per semester, we offer comprehensive student supports, which we know are a big piece in the apprentice model, is that total student support, the total apprentice support, where just doing the education piece is only one percentage of what's required for that apprentice to be successful, to retain their position, to be fully qualified and highly qualified in their position. And have, as Robin mentioned, have the opportunity to move within that career ladder and the different opportunities in the ECE workforce. The additional student access stipend is applied to each student and employer or sponsor's account each semester that classes are taken with Teach, and a quality improvement stipend based on the program's involvement with the Great Start to Quality. We offer book reimbursements each semester, as well as paid release time. So when students have to be away from their position in order to attend class, to study, to rearrange schedules so that they can arrange for childcare while they are doing schoolwork, that paid release time is paid back to their program on a semester basis. The compensation piece is tied to their ongoing movement through the education pathway. So they receive a bonus from Teach for completing credit hours each year, or for earning their credential. As mentioned with the CDA or MyYDA credentials, all they have to do is email us that evidence and they receive a bonus. each semester, I'm sorry, each annual year or annual contract with Teach. If they've completed at least 9 credit hours with the scholarship, they're eligible for a bonus, and that is tiered based on their education piece. So if they're in an associate's degree, they would earn $300 a year, bachelor's degree at $400. They also, on a traditional Teach model with their sponsor, would be receiving a 2% raise or a bonus of $375 from their employer each year as well. So that's combined with the Teach funding compensation increase. In addition to that compensation and the tuition support, they do have access to their program specialist. So we have 6 program specialists that are split up across the state in regions to support their community college and 4-year university caseload, as well as 2 CDA and MyYDA program specialists that are solely dedicated to providing CDA and MyYDA support. And we also now have a program specialist assigned to our career and tech ed students. So they have 1 program specialist that can help them navigate the higher ed system, financial aid, academic, and as well as career advising. So that has definitely proven to be a big support piece, and just having that. So sometimes it's just I'm not sure where to go. I'm going to call my program specialist and they'll point me in the right direction. And as well as the liaison between the higher ed programs, sometimes financial aid office, sometimes student billing, and the student themselves. So we try to reduce as many barriers as possible for them to navigate those systems. The turnover for Teach participants is at or below 3.85%. So we know that recipients are being retained in their programs. The program is investing in their highly qualified staff. And in return, that student is remaining employed. As a part of their regular Teach contract, they're there to remain employed with their sponsoring employer for 1 year following the completion of each scholarship contract. So that would be each academic year. Or in the case of those credential awards, that's a 6-month commitment to the field of early childhood ed. It's also a recruitment strategy, of course, for our programs to attract families, knowing that they have highly qualified staff and they're investing in their staff's education and compensation. I can go ahead and change the slide. So I'm also hopeful that my QR code will work, and feel free to visit our Teach website that has a lot more information about the eligibility for each specific Teach model, some video testimonials from folks who have worked with the scholarship previously. I also wanted to mention that Teach works collaboratively with other funding sources. For example, if you are utilizing the Michigan Reconnect Scholarship, TIP, any outside scholarships that students might be eligible for, as well as financial aid. We do partner with all forms of financial aid and scholarship so that we are really maximizing the funding opportunities that these students have. And even if they're not utilizing the scholarship portion for tuition, we still want them to take advantage of those additional bonuses, incentives, quality improvement stipends, book reimbursements, paid release time, all of those other pieces that are available to them. So it really is much more than just a tuition support piece, that regardless of the need for tuition payment, students definitely have a lot of benefit from participating.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. My mind is buzzing with all the opportunities for programs like Teach and other supports for early educators to work with our Michigan Works partners across the state to make sure that we're maximizing resources. So at this point, I'm going to invite Misty to take down our slides, and I'm going to invite our sponsoring agency partners to please come back on camera. No surprise, we've got some questions from the audience. So anyone that's here representing a sponsoring agency, if you are able to come back on camera so that we can ask some more questions, that would be great. And I think maybe the best way to do it is if you can unmute and let me know. So here's some things that we still have some interest in understanding. So is there an educational requirement for a childcare apprenticeship partner? We have someone that is saying, I've got an associate's degree, I'm a home-based childcare provider, I'm demonstrating quality. Is that enough? Evelyn, is that enough? Do you have to have all those things to be a childcare employer partner?
No, we work with all different types of employers, large, small, whatever that might look like. There are just some requirements though that the Department of Labor has on each registered apprenticeship program. And we work with employers, as I mentioned, where they are and try to find out what exactly they're looking for. And if we can help, if registered apprenticeship will work with what they would like to achieve.
Another question that we have, and I'm thinking Amy or Dick or Brian, this person's participated in our webinar. They think they're hearing that somebody from outside their childcare center would come into their center to provide training and support. I think the answer to that is it depends. But I'd love your thoughts on that. And is the director also expected to provide training and support for staff in the apprenticeship program? So Amy, might you talk about how it works in your apprenticeship?
Yeah, the way our program is structured is the apprentice attends a 2-hour evening session, and they do the educational components kind of on their own. We utilize the 2-book combo that the Council for Professional Recognition uses. So it's a textbook and then workbook questions that they have to answer. So that's how they receive their education hours, those 120. There's nothing in addition to that the director would need to do as far as providing training for them, because they're going to get the required licensing training through our course. And so we're not exactly coming physically into your space. The knowledge that we're giving to your participants will be coming into your space.
Wondering if others are doing anything different than that and would like to chime in. Dick, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, so again, we're a workforce development model. So we have apprenticeship coaches and we welcome them into our facilities. So I'm kind of both Steepletown and the center director here at the Early Learning Center on a compliance plan, working on my CDA. So I welcome Michael or Tony because some of our apprentices need that additional support. So we carve out time. Again, we have a third teacher so they can meet for an hour, hour and a half. Again, support, academic support's huge, especially in this space of applying to the council to get your CDA. There's a big gap. You finish the coursework, but then applying to the council, putting your portfolio together takes an effort. It takes some reassurance and sometimes some additional coaching. And we talked about other non-academic support services. So we're giving them the space to meet, and it takes a lot of the burden off of my plate as the director, because I don't have the time always when I'm dealing with a lot of other things throughout the day to have that time with these apprentices that just, they need that, just slow things down a minute. Yep. So that's really, really helpful. But yeah, center directors should be obviously coaching, supervising their staff. I'm a little remiss in that because I don't have the content yet. So that's why here in Kent County, we're blessed with a lot of resources with Great Start to Quality, with the Kent ISD for GSRP classrooms. We're part of the ELNC collaborative. So we've got a lot of that level of support, thankfully.
Evelyn, Carla, or Brian doing anything about what's actually happening with the director or the owner of the childcare? Anything to add to what's already been shared?
The only thing I would add is that I think that's one of the great things about registered apprenticeship is the flexibility that you have in determining your specific needs as an employer. But the even better thing is the fact that there's such tremendous community support. If you're looking for help, there are plenty of people in the community that are willing to come in and help.
Yes, I would definitely second what Brian said. There are so many resources and services out there. And we do our best to try to find those for employers. And we do customize, like I mentioned. So each of the programs is customized specific to that employer. We have teacher coaches that are employed by the employer, our one and only employer at the job sites. So they're providing mentoring for the on-the-job learning. And then we have 2 different educational tracks. We're adding a couple more to that. And that's just because we want to customize it and make sure that it's available to as many people and apprentices as possible across our region. We have such a large region with the 10 counties. We don't want to create a barrier for someone to try to get to the education or achieve the on-the-job learning. So we're trying to adapt that as we go.
Thank you, Evelyn. A couple of other questions I'm going to answer super quick. Is apprenticeship only for existing employees or is it intended for new employees? And I would say, based on what I know and understand, it's both. And in fact, can begin in CTE or with youth. So at a point at which people are not typically thought of being per se in the workforce. We did confuse some people with our slide about where is Kent County. So Kent County, yes, does have a hub. The sponsoring agency hub in Kent County currently is Dick's the organization that Dick is with, Steepletown Neighborhood Services. What was on our slide is that West Michigan Works has a larger region than just Kent County, and there is not a hub that covers the rest of West Michigan. And so we're hopeful that through our design grant process that we can help to bring registered apprenticeship to the rest of West Michigan. And I'm going to take a look here, Misty. I think there was one more that you were going to address before we go to our last poll.
Yes, there was a question about something that encompasses all the resources being mentioned today that you all could use to access information. I want to start by saying the 2 QR codes shared by Michigan AEYC and the My Registry information are operational and active. So you can use those to gather more information. Thank you, Robin and Kelsey. Also, at the end of this slide, I will be compiling a list of resources easily accessible to you all once we post our slides on our website. And of course, as you know, this webinar is being recorded should you want to go back and reference it, which we will also post on our website. So I hope that that answers that question enough. If not, feel free to place something else in the chat or in the Q&A, my bad.
All right, I think we're ready to go to our last poll before we close.
Wonderful. Well, I want to start by saying thank you again to the attendees for the many submitted and upvoted questions, and of course to the panelists for sharing all the valuable info that you've been able to discuss today. We've been able to learn a whole lot about what attendees need and want to learn more about connected to the topic of early care and education registered apprenticeships. We want to take an additional opportunity to continue gathering more information from our attendees through our very last poll, which is 2 parts that we will launch. First part of this poll, please identify which of the listed topics you found most helpful today. Then in the next question of this poll, please select the topic you'd like to learn more about. Give a couple of minutes for you all to consider those and provide some answers. few more seconds to allow those last responses to get in. Thank you everyone for taking some time to answer our poll questions so we can learn more from you. All right, we have about 85% participation, so we'll call that. The good news again is there's someone interested in everything of the topics covered today. Number one so far is general information about registered apprenticeships, all the stuff that everyone has been sharing about, so that's great. Special interest in ECIC's apprenticeship project. Of course, the Michigan Works and Registered Apprenticeships work as well. Existing sponsoring agencies and more information on that, and then my registry career pathway and my EC efforts to increase access to CDA of the topics covered today. Now, if we scroll down to select the topic you'd like to learn more about, there's special interest in more general information. So more sessions like this would be helpful, it seems. And tied for first is ECIC's apprenticeship project, more information there. Michigan Works Registered Apprenticeships, another high earner here, but everyone is interested in everything. So I think we'd be pretty safe to continue to cover these topics, including my registry career pathway, existing sponsoring agency information, and my AC efforts to increase access to the CDA. Thank you again to everyone who participated in the poll.
All right, and I just want to thank everyone for being with us here today. It's been a true pleasure to share this information with you. We are grateful for the opportunity to be working on this important project for the early care and education workforce, and very much appreciate our state and local partners, and hope that all of you will be interested in getting involved in apprenticeship efforts in your communities. Misty is showing on the screen that we're going to be providing you with contact information for everyone that was on this call today. You'll be able to see where they're from and how you might reach out to them. They've all provided this knowing that you may be interested to have some further follow-up questions. We did have a few questions in the chat that were a little specific or an opportunity for us to follow up. So we will continue to share information, and thank you so much. And please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Thanks again, everyone.